everyone. I'm excited to be here and let us get going. Thank you so much. This is going to be an awesome first day of our 3-day short-term rental challenge. I just couldn't sleep last night. So hopefully you saw my video just welcoming to the group and you are excited like I am. Today we're going to talk about where to look for a short-term rental and how to tell if you have one. So we're going to wait a few minutes, let people kind of get into the room. I have my assistant, Mila. She's handling the chat for me. So I want to make sure that she, if you have any questions, stick it in there for me. We are going to get started here in a little bit. It says, I've got some people waiting. So if you have any messages, I just put them in the chat because I want to hear from you. And I've got a surprise announcement. So I'm going to kind of wait. I don't want to get started till everybody kind of gets on board because I don't want you to miss out. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about the short-term rental market. It is on fire. And if you are someone who is just looking to get into this market, you couldn't get in at a better time. So I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I think most of you are. We might have some other people from other places. But you know what? Here's the really great thing is that, you don't always have to go out and find a distressed property, right, to do short-term rentals. So, I'm an investor. And so if I'm looking for a flip or, something to wholesale or a buy and hold, I am always looking for the 70% of ARV. Who's not looking for a good deal? So I can tell you that I have personally purchased right off of the MLS. Now, I'm not paying crazy market prices. You still have to do your due diligence. But after today, I think you're going to see that, you can actually open up your marketing to look for other types of properties. So I'm going to go ahead and I see we've got some people waiting and we're going to let them in. So what I'm going to do is here, just take a minute. And remember, if any of you have seen me present before, I am not a techo person. So number one, we're just going to go with the flow today, right? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that I can show you my presentation that I prepared just for you guys. So what I'm going to do is go grab that. So just hang tight. I do not want to accidentally cut the live stream off, right? So just bear with, and Mila's getting people in, so hang tight there. And I've got to find the presentation. That's the thing, with these Zoom calls, it's like the back and forth. If you've ever done them before, it can be quite challenging at times just to get click the right button, make sure you're not cutting anybody off and that kind of thing. So if there's any techo glitches, I'm just going to have to, say, oh, I'm so sorry about that. But I'm being very, very careful. When I was testing, I was doing all kinds of things like, okay, I did cut off my marketing partner. So Lyle, thank you so much for helping me out and showing me the ropes here. So let me get this up, guys. So, all right. So today, calling this module 1. So I know as some of you, let me go ahead, and I've still got some folks in the meeting room. So we're going to go ahead and admit. Okay, we got Comfort joining us, Mr. Bell. Okay, then I think we've gotten everybody. Welcome, welcome. And this is the start of the 3-day challenge. It's today from 10 to 11, it's tomorrow from 10 to 11, and it's Thursday, 10 to 11. And I have just decided I'm going to talk as much information about how to have a successful short-term rental business as I can. And I really appreciate everybody that shared, that was in the contest. We've got some of our contest winners. I posted on Facebook last night. Literally, I was up. For those of you who know me, I usually am it's no surprise to get an email from me at 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm a little bit better as I, get a little older, but I was so psyched about this contest and about the challenge that I just couldn't sleep. And I had to share some stories, and that's why I did the video, just to let this business is so exciting. So one thing I totally love about the short-term rental business is that I've been a long-term landlord forever, had a property management company, and there's just something about giving people a place to lay their head down when they're going on vacation or they're just trying to spend time with their family. And I had the best story. Just a week or so ago, I had a young couple that reached out to me and they needed a place to get away. And I told this story about, they experienced the loss of their child, and what a tragic, I can't even imagine that. And they were looking for a place just to get away, to recharge. And, it really kind of brought me back to reality. It's like, I'm not just providing a place for people to get away and go to the lake and go fishing and, have family reunions. I'm also providing people a place to just relax and recharge. And if that family had gone to like a hotel, then they would have known that they were, missing out in terms of like they had to go to a hotel, but they were able to come to a nice house that they felt comfortable in. It was homey. And she sent me the nicest message after their visit. So, that makes me feel good. It gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling that you're just able to help people, kind of overcome some really sad things, but provide them a nice place. So, there's more to short-term rentals and being a real estate investor than making money. I mean, who doesn't like to make money, right? And I like short-term rentals, and we're going to talk about how you can make money, but let's just dive right into it. I think we got pretty much everybody in, and Mila, you are kind of helping me out here. So, so first off, let's just talk about, where do you find a short-term rental? So when I work with people and I teach them and educate them about the short-term rental business, the number one question I get is, where do I find one, Nancy? Where should I look? You know what? And so that I decided to kind of focus a lot on, where are the short-term rentals? You'll hear the phrase Airbnb and VRBO, and those are really like the company names. So I'm really trying to focus on just, short-term rentals. But what I'm talking about is those rentals that are not 12 months. You could have a short-term rental that does like, 2-3 days, or it could do 28 days. There's all kinds of rules around not rules, but, you wouldn't, if you wanted a long-term rental, you'd go into a lease and things like that. So we're talking about, short-term rentals, less than 28 days. And then there's certain, benefits for having a short-term rental right now. So we're going to talk about, where are they, and then we're going to talk about how to determine if a property is going to make a good short-term rental. So at the end of this hour, you should be able to kind of, and one of your homework questions is, where do you want to buy a short-term rental? And you're going to be shocked. I was shocked when I was putting this together. I was like shocked at some of the destination places in Texas. So let's just dive right into it. So the first thing I wanted to show you, okay, of course, there we go. I'm a little computer. There we go. All right. So let's do some stats, because I think it puts it all in perspective, because you have a lot of people that are wanting to get into this business, but it's not for the faint of heart. You've got to be organized. You've got to have some people skills, and you like to deal with the public. And so if you don't have any of those, it's probably not the best business to be in. And this is not a business model if you have zero money. If you have zero money, you're not going to make it in this business, because you have to, provide, stock your Airbnbs. You have to furnish them, So let's just go over why I did some of these rental stat numbers. So first of all, worldwide, there's 2.9 million hosts. So that's who your competition is. Every month, there's 14,000 new hosts coming on to, a platform, Airbnb, VRBO, whatever it is. There are 7 million listings, right, in 100,000 cities, in 220 countries and regions. So they're everywhere, right? So when you ask me the question, well, where should I buy an Airbnb? They're everywhere. There's not a place that probably doesn't have any Airbnbs. Are short-term rentals a good investment? Well, it depends on how you go about getting one. So what I started off doing was I took some of my long-term rentals and I converted them. So if I was getting like $1,800 a month for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and now I'm getting $3,000 a month and I'm only renting it, half the time, then yeah, a short-term rental can produce 2 to 3 times more income than a long-term rental. One thing that's really nice, as opposed to a long-term rental, you're locked into that rental rate for an entire 12 months because you have a lease with the tenant. You know what? I can go in and adjust my rental rates daily if I want. I can charge more on a Saturday than I do on a Tuesday. So I can adjust. In the low seasons, I'm going to charge less. In the high seasons, I'm going to charge more. You're also going to have better care of your property because you have frequent cleanings, right? You don't have somebody. I had a situation in a long-term rental that, you know what happened? So I have a property management company, and the property management company, I guess, didn't go out to the property very often. And so getting ready to, convert this long-term rental into a short-term rental. And there's some, definite repairs that could have been identified a year or two ago, right? So I'm probably going to have to pay more. And then you have a lot of flexibility with the short-term rental market, just in terms of you can do it for 2 days, 3 days, however many people you can get into your short-term rental. Now let's talk about the top US cities. So if you just said, hey, Nancy, where are the top cities to invest in a short-term rental? This is it. So you got Florida at the top, New York. Now some of these numbers were, kind of in the done in 2020, 21. So COVID could have impacted some of these numbers, but this was kind of over a span of time. So these are the top cities to have an Airbnb. This is in the US, and you can see in Texas, we just have Austin, which, there's Lake Travis, big university, that kind of thing. The trending destinations, like where are people going now? So this is like, worldwide. Look at that. Milwaukee at the top. Who would have thought? I mean, my husband's from Milwaukee. I was like, I've been to Milwaukee, but Milwaukee is one of a trending. That means people are going more percentage wise. You've got Spain, Thailand, Australia, Romania. There's another US destination, Eugene, Oregon. But of these areas, you can see only 2 of them are kind of ranking up there. So unless you're wanting to go to Guadalajara, and I had to look this up. I mean, if you know where Vanuatu is, put it in the chat. All right, put it in the chat. If you know, I did not know where that was, and I had to look it up. So I was like, dang, where is that? So, but I think I want to go there someday. It looked really nice. So if you know where Vanuatu is, put it in the chat. Now, what are the trending? So that was worldwide. So what are the trending US destinations? So we've got Nashville, New Orleans, Orlando, Phoenix, Virginia Beach, Washington, D.C. So these are like the trending areas. But, most of us here are in Texas. And so for me, I want to invest in Texas. That's where I live. And I, want to do that. But if I was looking outside of the state, then I would be looking at this. Now, I will tell you, San Francisco, California, I think this probably was a little bit pre-COVID. If any of you have been watching out what's been happening in San Francisco, I was there 4 years ago, and it's going to be a long time before I go back to San Francisco. San Francisco, very beautiful, but they've got some challenges out there right now. So let's talk Texas. So, all right, here, I've got another one for you. Who knew when I saw this come up, I was like, Pasadena, Texas. Okay, in the chat, have you been to Pasadena, Texas? Okay, have you been there? Grand Prairie. Okay, now this was a little shocker to me because I do have a long-term rental in Grand Prairie, and I was like, dang. So I did the numbers, and sure enough, I'm in the process of, I have a long-term tenant in there. She's having to move, it's the end of her lease. And that's a property that we're seriously considering turning into a short-term rental. Fort Worth, Lubbock. And, the thing with Fort Worth is you can still find pretty good deals there. I mean, it hasn't gone super crazy over there. San Antonio, I love San Antonio, beautiful. Dallas have one of our speakers that's coming on tomorrow, Kristen Gersh. She actually has several short-term rentals in Dallas, and she's going to talk to us about that. El Paso and Amarillo. And I'm just going to check really fast because my phone is blowing up here. Okie dokie. Just making sure that all the speakers were able to get on and everything like that. So, but these are some Texas areas. So again, put in the chat, have you ever thought about investing in any of these cities? And have you been to Pasadena? So now, once you've kind of narrowed down your area, although we, Dallas and, Grand Prairie and that kind of thing, the next decision you need to talk about and make is what kind of property do you want? Because when you're searching for a short-term rental, is it going to be a single family home? Are you going to do a condo, a townhome? Are you going to do a shared space? Are you going to do a room? And are you going to do rental arbitrage? Now, rental arbitrage is simply where you get you're subleasing a property. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on rental arbitrage today, but I just wanted to throw it out there because depending on what you're looking for will determine how on Thursday, we're going to talk about where some lead generation, where you can kind of find, where to target your marketing for these types, for a single family home, for a condo, if you're looking at rental arbitrage, because it's going to make a difference on what your pricing strategy is going to be. So the impact of your decision is, so let's say you want to go for a bigger house. So I have a 3-bedroom and I have a 4-bedroom. My 4-bedroom has a little bit harder time booking. I mean, my 3 bedrooms stay booked all the time. So when you have a bigger space, you have more potential for more income because why? You can put more beds in there, right? So instead of having 6, you can do 8 or 10 or 12. But a bigger space, bigger property also means more costs for upkeep. So you have to kind of look at what, how much income and how much upkeep a bigger property is going to be. I talked with somebody that was looking at a property at Lake Travis the other day. Beautiful property. I mean, it's gorgeous, 5 bedrooms, overlooked. I mean, it needs a lot of work, but it's big enough that he could do events there. So that's the other thing. You can look at, a bigger space. You have less bookings overall for, I'm saying like spaces that do 15 people, 20 people, but maybe you could do events there. Now, and while I do my research, one of the things I did find is that the average group of travelers, from the platforms, Airbnb, VRBO, is about 2 to 4 adults is the average group of people that are traveling. So if you know that, then you can say, okay, well, maybe a 2-bedroom, 1 bath will work, maybe a 3-bedroom, 2 bath will work. And then pet friendly, as we're talking about decorating and doing things, so just pet friendly. I think pet friendly is the way to go because, a lot of Airbnb or short-term rental hosts don't do pet friendly. And if you can make your space pet friendly, you're going to be able to, people travel with their pets. They love coming with their pets. And a lot of times there's not too much damage with pets as opposed to with people that are, have the little children. So okay, we have someone waiting in the room in Facebook. So have that person come over through the link so that we can get them on. So Mila, if you can give them the link to come to the Zoom, that would be great. Just put it in the comments for them. So we're still working out the Zoom and the link and who has access and everything. So we weren't aware that we needed to give Mila all this access. So okay, so now we're going to go, and I'm having to move on. So keep going, guys. We're keeping going. Okay, so one of the questions, hey, Gabe, welcome, welcome. So questions to ask. So one of the things, basically it boils down to this. How much does it cost to hold the property? How much revenue will you earn? Are there restrictions in the area? HOA, city restrictions. How do you control your ongoing costs? So that has to do with, hiring the right teams, having, having a good cleaning company that can also kind of report things to you. How do you attract guests and booking? And what is your exit strategy? So the checklist that everybody's going to get that we'll be sending out and actually posting later today is all about the questions that you need to ask yourself if you are going to have a short-term rental business. I mean, that's what it kind of boils down to is how are you going to run your business? So before you can even say, where should I buy a property? Or, can I afford it? Will it make one? First off, who's going to manage it for you? What are restrictions? Because if you, for example, I live in Frisco, Texas, and they just recently, because it's always changing, right? They just recently did restrictions on short-term rentals. In Granbury, my husband and I are part of the Granbury Airbnb association there. And we're very active because right now, Granbury is very open to, the short-term rental space because they have moratoriums on hotels. So they rely on the short-term rental people to help when they have a lot of tourism and they do a great job in tourism. So the other thing you want to look at is who's your competition, because what you don't want to do is buy a property and think that you're going to get $300 a night when you find out everybody on the block has a short-term rental. And so now in order for you to be able to make any money, or now you're not going to be able to because you have to get booked, you have to lower your prices. So the first thing you want to do when you figure out your area is go on Airbnb or VRBO, either platform, as a guest. Don't log in as a host, log in as a guest. And what you're doing is you're going to start searching the areas of interest. So I was working with a young lady the other day, and she wants to get a property in McKinney. And I said, okay, well, let's look at where we can find Airbnbs in McKinney. So what you do is went in as a guest and we said, okay, we're going to zoom in on the area. And if you keep zooming, it takes a little bit of patience because the map, if you've ever been on Airbnb, the map is, tiny. And what you'll want to do is just keep zooming. And if you zoom in and keep moving it around, you'll actually start seeing the streets, the names of the streets. So this is what I do when I look at, okay, do I want to buy an Airbnb in this area, short-term rental? I look at how many other short-term rentals are in the area. And when I click on them, I can see how much they charge per night. And I can also look at pictures to see how they've tricked it out. What kind of amenities do they have? So do you see, you can kind of figure out who your competition is. And then you can determine, okay, well, do houses do well here? Do condos do well here? In her case, we were looking at rental arbitrage. So we found some apartment complexes that we, based on what we saw, we think that they're rental arbitrage. So those are some things that you can do by finding the competition. Then what you're wanting to do is you're really wanting to look at, and I said this earlier, what are the total expenses? So number one, the cost to purchase and or rehab. So later today, we are going to have our rehab person on, and she's going to talk to us about, location, but also when you rehab a property, there are certain things that you're not going to want to cut costs on for a short-term rental, because short-term rentals, usually you're trying to get high, especially if you're trying to get high dollar, right? You want it to flow. Tomorrow, we're going to talk more about decorating and color schemes and having a color plan. But, you kind of want to make sure that whatever money you're putting into it, and we're talking beyond, foundation and electrical and things like that. I mean, obviously you have to fix those things, but, what are you going to do to make it stand out and pop? Then what are your holding costs? So a lot of people, forget about, okay, you got to have insurance and you have to have a special type of insurance for short-term rentals. You have to pay for all the utilities. You have to pay for the yard service. You have to pay, I have a pool on one property and a hot tub on another. I have those costs because I'm not going to rely on I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to rely on a guest to do it. And then the cost to furnish. I mean, you could spend so much money here. I mean, and the sky is the limit, but you have to kind of say, well, who's my target audience and how, what kinds of things do I need to put in my short-term rental? And we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. But for example, I have one property that, it's just in an okay neighborhood. It's my little money maker, and I furnished it completely with Facebook Marketplace stuff. Completely, except for the mattresses. We did, invest in some good mattresses. But I have another house that I totally went down to, Nebraska Furniture Mart and just ordered a whole, slew of furniture from them. So, I mean, it just depends on what your target group is, so to speak. And then, what are your nightly rates? And then what's your booking percentage? So we're going to talk a little bit about what does that mean here in a minute. So now, obviously, as in real estate with anything, it's always about the location. So you could have the most beautiful property and you would think that it would make a great Airbnb, but if nobody is going to come to that area, if no one, there's no reason for them to come. For example, I was working with one of my students about Winters, Texas, and I didn't know where that was. I had to look it up. And you can see my YouTube video about how I talked with him about this, but I had to look it up. And so what we determined was that Winters, Texas is probably not a good area to have an Airbnb or a short-term rental. Now, if I'm wrong, put it in the comments, right? Because it's actually kind of southeast or west, I forget, of Austin. And for them to have a short-term rental in that area, they would have had to lower the price so much, like $30, because within a half an hour, you had all of these wonderful short-term rentals just south of Austin. So what are the attractions and events that are going to bring people? What are the amenities? So the little house that I was talking about, it's not in the best neighborhood. It's, it's safe, but it's not high end by any means. So, but it has a nice patio and a big backyard. So I invested in a hot tub. And people love the hot tub, and this is the house that I did all with Facebook Marketplace. So even though, you sometimes you work with what you have, I still did all of my due diligence. I made sure the numbers were there and my booking, that I could get bookings and things like that. And then safety and accessibility. So I've looked at neighborhoods, like most investors, I'm on a lot of wholesaler lists. And so they'll send me some houses that, might do okay as a short-term rental. But then when you go out and look at them, you see that the neighborhood is probably not conducive to having a short-term rental, because one bad review about, oh my gosh, this neighborhood looks like, it should be bulldozed, or we looked at a house that backed up to a super busy street. And if we had invested in that, and then people, it was really, really, we would have had to pay to soundproof the whole house. So it just takes that one or two comments by guest, and then you're not going to have very many bookings, or if you do, you're going to have a lower price. And then of course, you cannot forget about those city restrictions. Oh my gosh, they're ever changing. Zoning ordinances. You can pretty much pick up the paper for any city, or people don't read papers anymore, I guess, or the website of the city, and you'll see, there's registration requirements or inspections or permits. So more and more cities are moving towards this, and twofold. One, when they realize, so what Granbury loves about the short-term rental, there's about 225-ish short-term rental properties in the Granbury area. They net about $1.5 million in taxes for the city. So of course the city loves that, right? So as more cities get on board and try to have zoning or whatever, so that's one of the things. So as hosts, we have a responsibility to make sure we're running our businesses. We're taking care of them. We're not having party houses, that kind of thing, because that's really what shuts, that's what gets the neighbors all upset. When you have a irresponsible host, so to speak, that doesn't vet their guests, you might have an occasion where somebody, abuses your house and they have a party, but if you're somebody that gets shut down, have the police, the neighbors get upset about that. HOAs, huge. HOAs can really, run a short-term business out. But you can find out through a website on the city what their stance is on short-term rentals. Get involved with the city council, that either get involved or create, if there's not an association, then maybe create one. Now this works better in smaller communities, like I was saying about Granbury, but get involved, because if there is a problem, then you're a voice as one. And, our mission is to make sure that our guests have a, good experience, and that the hosts, we're trying to have some kind of accountability with hosts, taking care of their property, getting the trash picked up and everything, to minimize the neighbors or anybody else complaining about the short-term rentals. And remember, it's ever changing. So, I'm going to talk about exit strategy here later, but if you purchase, I know some people that bought in Arlington, and actually Arlington did used to be one of those cities that was top in the top Texas areas to invest. And then when they made their changes for restrictions on short-term rentals, I know two people that actually, they got shut down because they didn't fall within the parameter of where the city decided that you could and could not have a short-term rental. And to fight it, you got to hire an attorney and all that kind of stuff. So it's better to be proactive. But if you end up purchasing a short-term rental, make sure you read the deed restrictions, right? Because I actually ran into this where, sometimes the title company doesn't get all the deed restrictions, or they're fat, they're big, you don't take the time, but go through them. And if you're thinking about doing a short-term rental, have an attorney just look through that to make sure that there's, pay the $300 for them to kind of peruse it, just to make sure there's nothing in the deed restrictions that will prevent you. I saw a very sad story on Facebook that this couple had, bought this property, just poured, life savings into getting it up and running. Just about had taken their first or second booking, only to be shut down because they missed it in the deed restrictions. So for those of us who are realtors, I'm not sure where that liability falls, but you can't rely on other people to tell you how to run your business. You've got to do everything you can to protect yourself. So I'm just putting that out there. Make sure you read the deed restrictions. Okay, now we're going to talk about you're looking at this area. Now, who is your audience going to be? I call it the target audience. So, my properties are all, children are welcome, families, that's kind of who my target is. I'm in a lake community. Interestingly enough, though, I have had corporate people book a couple of our properties. So sometimes corporate people, especially with, their people are starting to return to work, but really short-term rentals did great during the pandemic, because once people could start going out and about, they felt more comfortable coming to a house or an apartment or condo than they did going to a hotel. Is your place vacation destination? Is it, in a ski resort? Is it in the mountains? Is it cabins? Is it glamping? I mean, that's a thing, where you have a unique experience for guests. It doesn't all have to be like, I know somebody that did a silo, and, she does really well. I think it's down in Waco. So I think she was on some TV show. You could target traveling nurses or doctors. So if you did that, you could look for properties around hospitals. Maybe you look for properties around a university. So when you think about short-term rentals, you can think about, okay, what are the events, the venues that are going on? And then if you just go on any of the platforms and you search for a property and you uncheck pet friendly, you'll see there's restrictions. There's not as many of them, or there's a lot more properties that don't allow pets than do. So I know for my guests that they love bringing their pets, and then we make it pet friendly in terms of, the furniture, the pet pads. One of the things that I have is like my favorite things, and I have these pet pads I got off from Amazon, and they protect the furniture, because my little dog, he gets on the furniture, he sleeps in the bed, and I'm sure, he's not the only dog out there that does that, right? So we provide little poop bags, water bowls, little treats and everything. And people love that, because at the end of the day, your guest, when they give you reviews, and we're going to talk more about this on Thursday, but this is how you keep your bookings up, by making your guests happy. And people that travel with their pets love having a place that they can bring their pets. So the next thing you should look at is what is going to be your pricing strategy. So the place to look at, there's a couple of them, but I use AirDNA. Now, if you're familiar with Bigger Pockets, you can actually go to Bigger Pockets, and I pay I think it's like $300 for to get access to their tools. And so if you're doing the BRRRR strategy or long-term rental or flip, they have all these tools. One of them is for Airbnb. And when you click on that, it actually takes you to the website for AirDNA. And you can go here and you can find out, you can put in an address anywhere. I don't know if it does it out of the country, but anywhere in the United States, and it will tell you an average of the nightly rate. So you put in the address, and I have the free account. I don't even pay for the, you can pay for a subscription. I have a free account. So go in there, make an account. So a property that you're doing your due diligence on, you type in the address, and then it's going to pop up with, okay, well, how many beds does it have? And how many people can it sleep? And then you can play around with those numbers, and then it'll give you a little brief report, right? A brief report so that you can determine, okay, I can get, $300 a night. My booking rate is 75%, meaning that you should be able to book 75% of the time. It can go over, and then you kind of have to estimate your high and low season. So let's say you're in the ski area, in the mountains. So, they're going to get more per night when you can go skiing. In summertime, I like to go to the mountains, so I think that they could probably do the same. But weekday versus weekend, and I think almost every host can attest to this, unless you're targeting corporate, most people are traveling on the weekends. Now, I love having, we've had in Granbury, they have 4 power plants. Who knew this was a thing? Well, I knew that was a thing, but who knew it was a thing that they have workers that need a place to stay during the week? And these are sometimes just last minute bookings, but they're great. We haven't had any issues. I mean, these are usually like guys that come in, they're going doing their shift. They leave early in the morning, they come late at night, they eat out. It's awesome. And so they have been able to fill up our weekdays. And then of course, events, holidays, and then calendar management just has to do with, you will want to put your listing out on multiple platforms. There's not just one, there's a ton that you can put your listing on, but you'll need a way to manage all the calendars into one. And there's applications that you can purchase. I use Hospitable, and I really like it. It's easy to use. Remember, I said in the beginning, I'm not techie. So I like to make sure that I have just one and done kind of thing. There's other ones though. I also like that they were reasonable and they didn't make me sign a contract. So I liked them, but there's other ones out there too that do calendar management. So on your costs, so what we're talking about now is that, we're looking at different locations and, getting you really to think about, okay, where would I want to go? Where do I want to invest? What are some good places to invest in? Then you're going to look at, okay, so how much is it going to cost to purchase the property? How much is it going to cost to furnish it? And how much am I going to earn? So it's expenses and income after you've purchased the property. So now with a short-term rental, unlike long-term rentals, the only maintenance cost you have is like, making sure the AC works, but you don't have ongoing things like stocking supplies. I think the second question I get asked, so number 1 is, where should I buy an Airbnb? Number 2, do you provide toilet paper, or how much? And toilet paper, there's like just scads of conversations about toilet paper. So I say, don't cheap out on the toilet paper, provide toilet paper for your guests, but you've got to, not only pay for it, but how are you going to get it there, right? So if you have multiple properties, how are you going to do that? And are you going to pay management fees? So again, it comes down to looking at locations and then looking at the cost and how much money you can make versus what is your cost going to be. So the same example, and she's on here, so I hope she doesn't mind, but we did a thing on the rental arbitrage in McKinney. So we said, okay, the average 2-bedroom, 2-bath property in McKinney, let's call it $2,000. I don't know if I'm high or low, but that's what we came up with for a nice apartment. So that when you do rental arbitrage, you have to sign a lease. So you have to qualify for the lease, and then you have to pay for the utilities. So literally it came down to, it was going to be about $2,500 a month for her to do rental arbitrage with a short-term rental. So then you come back to, okay, well, then how much can I get per night? Now, because there were multiple short-term rentals in the area, I think that we came up with the most, I think it was like 125 to 150, something like that per night. So literally she would have to rent the property 20 days out of a month just to break even. So you can see how, you can look at an area or a property, but if you can't make the money, whether you own it or you rental arbitrage it, if you can't make the money, it doesn't make sense as an investment. And that's what you have to think about. So it's not only where the property is, what it's going to cost to get it and maintain it, and then how much rent or nightly short-term revenue. So how can you, so let's say you're kind of like, well, how can I increase? Because, you do have to pay fees on these booking sites. Now, most of the time that's absorbed by the guest, but let's just say that, for your calculation, you still have to pay them. So we've gone through a lot of things of what you'd have to pay, but typically, Airbnb, I think it's like 3%, VRBO is more, you have your taxes. And again, you have your cleaning fee. Now, granted, a lot of those costs are covered by your guest, by your nightly rate. And there's different ways, like if you're a cleaning fee, because, cleaners have figured out the short-term rentals hot. And so guess what? The cleaners are charging more, supplies are more, gas is more. So they're charging more. So you have to figure out a way to, let's say your nightly rate is, I don't know, 200, but your cleaner's charging you 225. So most people are going to frown upon paying more for a cleaning than they are for a nightly. So then maybe you have to raise your nightly so that the perception of the guest is that they're paying maybe 150, but you're not losing money by not charging to cover that. Does that make sense? So one of the things that I'm actually moving towards, and the way a host can make more money, is you can move to a direct booking. So this means you forget about all the platforms, you avoid their fees, you become more competitive because you maybe charge a little bit less because you're not having to give up some of your money just to be on their platform. But it takes time to build that. Think of it, it's like building your book of guests, right? Because you can't just start off, you've got to use social media. So I posted this on Facebook about my QR code. So what I did is I took my Granbury properties and I bought a domain name. So buy 2 or 3 domain names, and you don't have to necessarily have a Facebook or a website for each of those, but think about down the road, how you could maximize social media and get the exposure out about your property. And there are platforms and applications that you can get that you can build your own website or have someone do it for you. And you can do direct bookings where they're not going through a platform, they're coming right to you. And the cool thing about this, and we've already experienced some of it, and we've only been doing it just a few months now, is you target your repeat guests, the people that gave you 5-star reviews, that were great guests, that you gave 5 stars to. There's ways that you can find out their email address and phone number. So, so that you can start building this. Now, if you're on Airbnb, you can't just ask them for their email address because Airbnb will block it out. So just a little tip, what I do is we have guest registration forms in our properties. Right? We have, I'm going to show you this here in a minute, and I have card racks and I have books. So I show the people like, hey, we have more than this one property, because I want them to know I'm a good host, get reviews on Google. I'm still working on that part of it, but that's how you can increase your revenue without, and also the other reason you would want to do this when the pandemic first hit, Airbnb made a unilateral decision that no matter what a host cancellation policy was, that if a guest said, hey, I have COVID, or I'm not traveling because of COVID, they got all their money back, even if they just canceled the day before. So lots of hosts lost lots of money because of that. So if you're in charge of your own business, so to speak, you are not relying on the other platforms to tell you how you can run your business or tell you how much money you can make. And that's why you would want to investigate how to, work towards direct bookings. Now, here's my QR code. So I don't know if you can actually take your phone and go over there, but hey, give Granbury Vacation Getaway a little share there. And again, Not Techie went on Instagram, made this, put it on Canva, boom. And then I had these little cards printed up that says follow us, and I put them all in my short-term rentals. So it's just a great way to get exposure and to get followers and then move towards your direct booking. I mean, that's why I did it. And then here's rack cards. Now, this is really cool. You can go, I designed these in Canva. These are our 3 little properties in Granbury. And I also have a website, or not a website, but I bought the domain name, Granbury Vacation. On the back, it has all of that. And we put these in not only I joined the chamber in Granbury. So what ended up happening is I'm able to put them in their visitor centers. So these are like the cards, like when you go to a hotel and they have them in the lobby and like go to this museum or go to this park or go to, you know, whatever it is, it's advertisement for my properties. And if somebody were to pick this up, they could direct book with me. They don't have to go through Airbnb or VRBO or booking.com or, you know, 100 other sites. And then that gives me more control over who's in my property, which goes on to, you know, vetting guests, which we're going to talk about later in the challenge. So that's just a great way to start advertising your properties, because it does take some time to move towards a direct booking. It's not something like you can throw up, you know, throw your short-term rental up on there and start doing it, because you're going to have to get some bookings from the other platforms. All right, guys, this concludes day 2. I'm going to answer some questions that we got, and I have an announcement, so don't go anywhere. So you got some homework before tomorrow. So I want you to come prepared to put in the chat tomorrow, where would you buy a short-term rental and why, you know, based on what we went through. And then let me know what one thing you learned that you can use to start your short-term rental business today. Like I said, okay, what can you do? So you have the location, that kind of thing. Tomorrow, what we're going to hit on is decorating, furnishing, what you need to buy, how to stage, what attracts your target audience. You know, the things that, you know, like, you know, professional pictures is going to be one of those things. Now, if you have any questions about anything I went over today, you want to tell me privately that you've been to Pasadena or that, you know, Winters, Texas or whatever, you know, email me at nancy@winningdealsandheels.com. I'm afraid to like take the share down. So let me just see if I can go to the chat and see, because I think Mila, here we go, we got some chats. Okay, we got, if we have people hanging out in Facebook Live, I'm so sorry that we can't get you on here, but don't worry, it's gonna, this whole thing is gonna be up in the Facebook challenge page. You guys are gonna have access to it. And we're gonna get Mila access tomorrow so she can help me out here. San Antonio, thank you. Thank you. No to Pasadena. Oh, mattress to use. Okay, we're going to talk about mattresses tomorrow. And the checklist, we're going to be sending that out. You'll either see it later, y'all get a post. Now, I have a big announcement to ask. So, you know, I want to make sure, I mean, part of me doing this whole challenge is to give people the information they need to move forward, because in the short-term rental space, it's like so hot, right? And when I say it's hot, I mean, it's like when you have a market that, you know, you need to learn how to pivot and take advantage of whatever's going on in the market. You know, it's crazy right now, like for homeowners that are trying to buy a property right now, good luck in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. My daughter and son-in-law, you know, I just said, you need to stay where you're at because it's just insane right now. So, you know, I don't know that I would be looking in Dallas personally for a short-term rental unless I knew that I could make a lot of money off of it. So that's the thing with knowing where and how to determine what you can get. I mean, that really is the key. Now, the other thing that there is a key to, because this market won't last forever in terms of the short-term rental, there'll come a saturation point. So I always tell people, make sure you have another exit strategy. So if you buy that nice, big, fancy property for $500,000, because you can make 2 million, let's just say, on short-term rental. But what happens when that market dries up? Will you be able to do that? I'm not advocating anybody go out there and spend $500,000 on a property, by the way, unless you show me the numbers that you can make 2 million, then I'll totally be supportive. But where you buy at, you know, can you sell it later on? Can it turn into it? So every single one of mine can turn into a long-term rental. That's my exit strategy. One of them could also be just sold retail because of the location. It's, you know, very desirable location. So always make sure you have an exit strategy. So here's my bonus. So I've given you your homework of tomorrow, come prepared to put in where would you buy a short-term rental and why, and what's the one thing you learned today. But I want to say we are inviting everybody to the powwow hour. That's going to be the bonus. Everybody's going to come in. We're going to, Susan Tierney is going to be here next. I'm going to get ready to sign off. And then Mila, we're going to put the link to the next hour in the comments, right? In Facebook, the Facebook Marketplace, right? Or that, not Facebook Marketplace. Oh, no, we're going to put the challenge link. It's going to be another Zoom call. There won't be a presentation. It's just going to be me and Susan talking and answering some questions. I guess if we think about it, if we have time, we'll answer the mattress question. But we're going to be talking more about, rehabbing and location. So Mila's going to put that link for the powwow hour. We're going to start at 11:15 for that. So, all right, does anybody, yes, you got my questions here. So if we don't have anything else, I'm going to go ahead and stop the share and let you guys get a drink of water, take a bathroom break, and come back at 11:15 and log in. And we're going to have a powwow hour with Susan Tierney, who's a good friend of mine. And she has been doing, I'm going to let her tell her story, but she's been doing real estate investing just as long as I have. So, and she's knows her stuff as far as she does a lot of rehabs. And so, and she has a process, which a lot of people don't talk about the process. They talk about, oh, you need to do this, but she actually has a process that she's going to share a little bit with us. So, all righty. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, if we don't have any questions, we're going to sign off. So thanks, everybody. Give me a big wave, thumbs up, and I'll see you in just about 20 minutes.